Okay, so welcome everyone, and I can see that there are already 42 participants. So yeah, welcome everyone to the Visual Storytelling 101 workshop. I am Kristina Serovai, and I am here with my co-host and fellow visual thinker Yuri Malishenko. And first, we would like to quickly introduce ourselves. And I hope that you can see my camera well. So this is me, and I work at MKB FinTech Lab as a UX researcher and designer, and I also like to create content and write articles, and I already created 120 UX knowledge-based sketches. I am an online teacher too. Currently, I have 2 courses on Udemy, and one is about how to use sketching in the UX design process, and the other one is about how to collaborate with developers. I like mentoring, and I am a lecturer at several UX courses. And of course, I consider myself a visual thinker. I like sketchnoting, for example, during conferences, and I use sketching during my work. And I am also a gamer. And for instance, I have too many board games and video games. And by the way, this is a mind map. So you sketch out the main concept here, and then the central ideas. And next to the central ideas, you attach the branches. And please, Yuri, introduce yourself too.
Sure. Thank you, Kristina. My name is Yuri Malishenko, and I am a Ukrainian living in Copenhagen in Denmark. By day, I'm an agile coach working for a bank, helping the teams and the organization to harness agile and design principles to create better products and services to our customers. And by night, I'm what I call a visual thinking champion. And what I mean here is that I promote the topic and I apply the method myself in my job, and I blog, I train, and train both, you could say, in live sessions, but also online as a pre-recorded courses. I have a course on Udemy I have published earlier this year called Visual Thinking and Sketchnoting Bootcamp. And in that course, I try to compress all the practical things you need in order to get up to speed with using visual thinking in your job, regardless of what you're doing. I run a podcast show on visual thinking where I interview people who are either professionals, meaning that they provide visual thinking as a service to their customers, but also all sorts of professions and disciplines where they actively use this method to do their job better. Well, I do a lot of videos and stuff. So today I'm here to explore the topic of visual storytelling with you, and I hope you're going to like it. So
yeah,
is this the part where we, yeah.
There was a question in the chat to you, Yuri, about sharing your resources, and we are going to share all the links we mentioned later on a Miro board, so you will find it later. And yeah, I just would like to quickly talk about what we planned for today's workshop. And by the way, we want this to be a very relaxing experience for you after a long week of working and attending talks. So we don't have strict time frames, and we would like to devote a lot of time to your questions at the end of the workshop. So this is our agenda. We already introduced ourselves. Then we are going to continue with a fun warm-up exercise. Then Yuri will talk about what is visual thinking and why is it great. And then I will lead you through something I call the train exercise. It's a lot more complicated than it seems, but I will tell you how to deconstruct a concept and how to choose components from a complex idea. And then Yuri will take over and talk about storytelling. And then we are going to build our little characters. We will show you a method for storytelling in 4 simple steps. Then we are going to talk about the theory of storyboarding, and then we will create a storyboard together. And we will give you a lot of homework along the way, and we will ask you to draw along with us throughout this workshop. So please, Yuri, tell the participants how can they create their own workbook.
All right, and that takes us to the next question about what type of materials do we need in order to go through the workshop together. Well, when it comes to me and Christina, I hope I can speak on your behalf here too. We are big nerds, pen lovers, big time. So whenever I go to a stationery shop, I never leave empty-handed from there. So I'm going to use a lot of pens. But don't worry, you don't have to be as nerdy about that as we are. So as long as you have some kind of a pen or some sort of a, I don't know, a technical pen, something that can leave a solid black or dark blue mark, you're fine. So that's the minimum thing you need. And also you need to have 5 sheets of A4 paper. And we're going to fold it to create a do-it-yourself workbook. And we're going to create this workbook together. And don't worry, even if you think you cannot draw, you will be able just to, by repeating our instructions, accomplish every single element of the workshop. But if you prefer to draw digitally, or you have your favorite notepad, you can use that, of course. So draw digitally if you prefer, and either in your favorite notebook. But if you have prepared some A4 paper, or you have them somewhere close by, just grab 5 sheets of paper. And let me count, I have 5. It's because, I mean, why 5? Because that's how many pages we want to create today. So not more than less. And what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to fold them in half like this, so that we can have a nice makeshift workbook. So I will use one of my pens to reinforce the crease so it folds nicely. And yeah, you just do the same thing yourself if you don't have a ready notebook or something like that. So if you decided to follow along with just copy paper, do what I'm doing, right? Just fold the paper and apply some reasonable force to fold it nicely, like that. Okay, that will suffice. It's okay. It doesn't have to be perfect. So that's our workbook. And as Christina mentioned, we will just take turns. But I know that Fani, our helper and moderator of the session, she spotlighted our video, so you can at all times see 2 of us. I will follow Christina's instructions, and Christina will follow mine. Our notes and the way we draw will differ, and that's totally fine. It's also to demonstrate to you that you might simplify certain things, leave out, add your thoughts on the sides. It's totally fine. We don't need the same workbooks, right? We just follow a skeleton of the narrative today, but it's totally fine to adjust and maybe modify here and there. And for you to be encouraged and see how we're doing these things ourselves, you will see our cameras side by side to follow along. And just feel free to switch between the views if you want to, but I would definitely recommend to be able to see 2 of the views at the same time. Okay, so that's our workbook. And the first thing we do is that we give a name so we don't forget what was that about. So let's write down Visual Storytelling 101. So something like this. Visual Storytelling 101. So it's November 20th, and the year is 2020, the second year of COVID, as the historians will put it later. And it's by Christina Serovai and Yuri Malyshenko. That's myself. Okay, that's our title for the workbook. And in the end, we will probably have more time to decorate and stuff, but for now it suffices. Now you know what is this about, and if you show it to your colleagues, it will be clear enough to understand what's the content of this workbook. All right, now we're ready to go. Christina, will you take over?
Yes, thank you, Yuri. And just one more thing. Whenever you feel you want to show your sketches, just turn on your cameras and show it to the camera. And you will be able to upload your sketches to the Miro board. We will share the link later if you want. And for example, we can give you feedback on your sketches during the Q&A session. And just as Yuri said, there is no right or wrong drawing, just capture what you want, leave out things you don't feel that important. And so let's start with a quick warm-up exercise. Turn your page, please. And this is my favorite icebreaker or warm-up exercise. So the first thing you need to do is to just you can write down that it's a warm-up exercise. And your first task is to create 4 quadrants on this page. And you can always turn the page if it's more comfortable. And just a quick tip for you. So if you try to draw a straight line by only using your wrist, you can easily end up with a curve. So it's better to use your whole forearm and lock your wrist. And that way you are going to end up with nice straight lines. Of course, it requires some practice, so don't be discouraged if it doesn't straight. It is not straight. And after creating these 4 quadrants, please create some random squiggles here, like this, with big moves. Like this.
Christina, do my squiggles have to look like yours, or
no, of course not. They are just random squiggles. So yeah, thanks for this additional instruction. So just add the squiggle that just comes out randomly from your pen.
And if my squiggles are not as beautiful as yours.
Oh yeah, my squiggles are really beautiful. Yeah, I should add some stars too. Yeah, they're really shiny squiggles. And then if you take an additional color, yeah, we both like blue. And then, surprise, these squiggles are actually little birds. So please add beaks and eyes and wings and tails and little bird legs and bird feet to each squiggle, and just imagine the birds inside these. And you can also add some objects or some lines that indicate the context. For example, this one is floating on Lake Balaton, I think, and the sun is shining. Yeah. And after you are done with this, you can also add some texts. So what is this little story about? What is the bird saying? For example, this says, "Hey, little worm, yummy." Yeah, this one. How about your birds, Yuri? Yep.
It's too fast. You need to give us more time.
Yeah, right.
I'm still on my number 3.
Yeah, sorry. I will slow down.
Okay, how much time do we have?
Just whatever you need. I mentioned that we don't have any strict timeline to follow.
So maybe a couple minutes to finish it off.
Yeah, but time boxing is great because while it seems that it limits your creativity, it's a good thing that you have some kind of artificial constraint. So yeah, just 2 more minutes to finish these. And then if any one of you want to show it, please turn on your camera and just show your little bird. And by the way, this exercise, it wasn't invented by Dave Gray. He says that he learned it from one of his teacher friends, but I read it on his blog called Game Storming. And I will link this too on the Miro board. And you will find a lot of nice visual exercises there. So, Yuri, do you want to share your little stories?
Yeah, sure. I'm giving my birds some titles here. So we have 2 birds walk into the bar story. And then here I broke the rules and I just drew a bird underneath the squiggle because I really struggled to turn the squiggle into a bird.
Yeah.
And this one will be named Oh Shoot. And this is a dreamer bird. Or maybe a visionary bird. I don't know.
Cool.
Okay. Yep. Cool exercise. All right, let's move on to the next topic. And briefly, I would like to talk about what is visual thinking, right? So what is that? So let's give it a title. What is visual thinking? And just feel free to follow me along and draw what I'm drawing. You can also choose to listen and reflect and take your own notes, whatever works for you. However, if you feel you're challenged on the drawing part, I strongly recommend that you just copy everything I do, because that way you will practice more and hopefully overcome your drawing fears, right? So just follow along. The way I talk about visual thinking, I start with a person. It's a person-centric exercise. And let's draw a super simple person here in the middle. So just a basic circle, a pair of eyes. Hopefully that's a happy person, a kind of a simplified smiley brows, and a torso, right? And the edge of the tabletop. That person has a hand and just a smaller circle instead of the fist or a palm. Let's take a pencil into that hand, and then let's give the person another hand leaning on the table. And then there is an A4 piece of paper, and that's you or someone else. And that person is, when we talk about their professional setting, their environment, they're dealing with a lot of mess, informational overload, stress, complexity, uncertainty, you name it. And our job is to turn the uncertainty into great products and services, right? So we're consuming, we're taking that in, and then what is happening is your brain is working. They're trying this device, this bio technological device is trying to understand, make a sense out of it. So inside of your head, in your brain, something is happening. So let's talk about that. So you have this complexity, you have this uncertainty, right? And you need to figure something out in order to find a solution. What we know about the brain is that it's a pattern recognition computer. It's really good at making immediate decisions. And I think a few guys yesterday mentioned that. I think Camille was talking about the lizard brain, and then Susan told us more about how we make decisions and stuff. But basically, I think where we are bad, because of the specifics of how the brain operates, it tries to fire off the lizard reaction, right? So basically, there is a small lizard living inside of each of our brains, and that lizard is trying to make a quick decision, like, is it good or is it bad? And that's it. So it's preventing us basically from seeing a big picture quite often. And also because of the way the brain is designed by the nature, I believe, is that it focuses on some fragments. We have this term compartmentalizing thinking. So we don't want to spend too much time thinking big picture. It's difficult, right? Rationalizing stuff is difficult. So what we do when we deal with this uncertainty and complexity, and our lizard brain is trying to take over all the time, like, okay, see the situation, boom, here is your solution. And we know that the first solution is always wrong, right? So how do we do about it? Well, you could activate visual thinking here as an additional tool to fight your biases and to help you see the bigger picture behind this fragmented approach. So what you do is basically, when you are consuming this information you need in order to get to a decision, to find a better solution, what you could do is that you could draw out the essence of what you are seeing, hearing, and create some sort of a simplified model, right? And simplified is a keyword here because you cannot really capture all of the details of this uncertainty. You cannot draw every single element of it. And I want to quote Simon Wardley here. He is a prominent mapper and a very avid visual thinker. He says, the best representation of France would be a map drawn in a scale 1:1 with all the details, with every grain and a piece of stone mapped. And two questions arise. Is it possible? And second, is it going to be helpful if you draw a map of a France the size of the France, right? Yes, it would be a perfect depiction of this complexity and uncertainty, but can you really use that? No, because it doesn't make sense. So instead of just creating a representation of this uncertainty, you try to get to the essence. You try to get to a core message. And a lot of criticism is preventing visual thinking to spread vastly, simply because when we look at the simplified drawings, we think it's not serious, it's not professional, especially in the corporate cultures. But it's getting better, it's warming up. But what you need to believe, or maybe not believe, but to accept for yourself, is that simplified is good, because it helps you to iterate and find a mental model that fits to the situation. So you basically do the following. You draw, you create that simplified core message that triggers your brain to overcome the lizard guy and start thinking big. it's more difficult for the brain, it's more energy consuming, but that's pretty much one of the effective ways to overcome the lizard brain thinking. So you kind of suggest this simplified model, and then your brain starts to look for the connections, it starts looking for the similarities, and maybe is becoming a bit open to even change the predefined mental model, something which Guthrie was mentioning before. When we are becoming adults, we imprint certain mental models and become the slaves of those for the rest of our lives, basically, right? But with this externalized, simplified model that you feed into the brain, maybe it's easier to overcome your biases. Maybe it's easier to create new mental models and stuff like that. But what is also important is that suddenly you expanded your cognitive ability, and it's less stressful to analyze this complexity. And as a summary, what I can say here, the visual thinking is a kind of a continuous, iterative, and never-ending process where you take in the complexity, you create the simplified model on a piece of paper or digitally, you feed it into your brain through the eyes channel, basically. You fire off a more meaningful process of thinking about stuff, basically saying to your lizard, move to a side. The adults are working here, right? And then you get it back to where you are. So you reiterate, you ask questions, you clarify, you share, you have a discussion. So it's an ongoing process. And if I had to finalize in a sentence, in a definition, what a visual thinking is, then I would suggest that a visual thinking, and I will write it down as a summary of what I have explained here, is a process. It's a process and also a toolbox. It's a lot of different methods and techniques that is externalizing. And the irony now is that I'm writing this down. So it's a process that is externalizing your thinking. Okay? To expand your cognitive ability. That's what the visual thinking is. You create your externalized expansion of your brain function to make it easier to take over from your lizard brain and start thinking big pictures, start thinking systems, look for connections, make it easier to communicate, because suddenly you externalized your thinking and it's easier to take it to your colleagues and to your team, and they can get up to speed really fast about what you're working on or what you are concerned with. Okay, so that was not really fast, but I think it was necessary to explain what we understand under visual thinking, and a lot of this stuff is used in the rest of the material we're going to share. So
can I add something, Yuri? Yeah.
Yes,
so I just want to go back to the first exercise for a second, because this exercise demonstrates what Yuri just said, that we are pattern recognition machines. And you can see that when I told you that these are birds, these random squiggles are birds, you could instantly see these birds formulating from them. And as you can see, there was very little needed to convey some meaning. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Nice. Okay, so I hope you had time to catch up and note down and create your simplified, externalized explanation of that. because I need to now turn the page, and we are going to talk about the values that visual thinking suggests. And in a way, we have touched base on many of them now, but also to allow you to practice a bit more of visual thinking and sketchnoting in a way, because one of the reasons why we are doing this workshop this way, where we explain as we draw, is to encourage you to practice. It does not make sense to talk about visual thinking. Visual thinking, it's like sports. You don't learn to play basketball or any other type of sports unless you play, right? So you don't learn visual thinking if you talk about visual thinking. So even though you might feel like, okay, we have touched the base on the values, but it's just to practice the icons, the command of space and stuff like that. So why visual thinking is important, and I will just write valuable. Why is it valuable? What is in it for me? How can I apply that? So let's say we're super biased when it comes to visual thinking. I guess we are now beyond the point of no return, and you cannot convince us otherwise. But let's say if I talk about my personal experience, like what was the struggle before using visual thinking in my profession or my teams, because I cannot really say I never used visual thinking once in my life. But let's say what is wrong before visual thinking becomes an accepted method on the team I'm working with. And then let's say after I can see that the practice is being recognized and used. So after visual thinking. So what is that value? And by the way, we're using a lot of icons in this workshop to get you up to speed how to depict certain simple things. And that's also a part of the practice. So what is the value of it? And here again, I want to talk about certain things. I want to mention this complexity guy we talked about. So we have this complexity. We have this too much information, the information overload. I will draw just a lot of sticky notes. And I have nothing against sticky notes, okay? Don't get me wrong. I love sticky notes. I just needed a metaphor for the information overload. So let's say a messy sticky note situation, right? So there are no clusters, there is no system to it, just a lot of information. Go figure out. So too much information. And I will borrow a fantastic visual story from Jeff Patton, the author of User Story Mapping book and method. And in that book, he suggests a visual storytelling approach to explain the value of creating maps together. So he draws confused people. He draws three guys, and these guys are thinking about stuff. And here's where we introduce this, the thought bubble, like those clouds emanating from the heads of those guys. And inside of each thought bubble, we have different shapes. We have a square, a circle, and a triangle. And that's a powerful metaphor suggested by Jeff Patton for misalignment. So what I can say, I can see in the teams or with the people who do not know yet how to use visual thinking powers to support them in their job, is that they don't have an effective way to find out what is the most important in the massive of information coming their way. It's difficult for them to work cross disciplines, and we know from Agile that the future is with multidisciplinary teams, basically groups of people that come from different fields. You find software developers there, business analysts, UX designers, all sorts of different walks of life. And the way we are trained in our universities and schools is that we learn different systems, modules, languages. So it's difficult to understand each other. When a software developer is trying to express their problem, they're using their jargon. And when we talk about even the same thing, a new feature, for example, might not be the case that people will understand each other the same way. So there is a lot of misalignment. And of course, the complexity doesn't go anywhere. We've been hit by COVID and we don't know what else is coming, right? So maybe something else happens 2 months from now and our complexity just expands. So with visual thinking, what you could do, and we have mentioned this before, you could, for example, simplify everything by creating really cheap, lousy sketches. Just draw something on paper. Just try to understand the spatial relationship, the connection between the things, trying to see the most important bits and pieces, the skeleton that is looking through that huge ball of yarn. So the simplification is one of the key values and benefits that visual thinking suggests. So simplification. Another value that is suggested by visual thinking is that when you are the one creating the notes about something you've heard, read, listened to, and you put it to paper or to some digital format, doesn't matter. When you really noted down the simplified structure of what you've heard, right? And it can be as simple as icons, text, and whatever. Not only you simplified, but you have created a visually referable map for your brain. So next time when someone brings something up, or you need to remember something, it's more memorable because not only you simplified the stuff, but you helped your brain to sort it out so that whenever you need it, it's going to be so much easier to find that part in your brain where the corresponding information is stored. And your sketch note or your drawing on a whiteboard or a digital drawing in Miro for that for that matter will be a kind of a visual reference point to quickly find all of the deep information and all of the detailed information your brain stores. So suddenly the information processed in a visual manner becomes more memorable. So you can memorize it better. Memorable. I hope I spell it nice. And especially when you work with other colleagues, when you have to collaborate, and we know we have to collaborate. We cannot be successful staying individual in the technology world, but also in the fast changing world. So then I will use the second part of Jeff Patton's metaphor here. Once you do the stuff the visual way with your team, what happens is that you're not a hostage of assumptions and wrong considerations. If you took the input they had in the beginning, right? If you ask them to externalize their mental models, and you did that in Miro or on the whiteboard, doesn't really matter, or you put it to paper, brought it to the discussion and used that to build on it, you are engaging in this continuous circle I've mentioned before, but now in a group of people, and you can iterate and iterate and iterate until you find something that makes sense for all of them, right? Maybe a sum, a combination of those perspectives, and that result becomes a shared result of everyone involved. So you get the benefit of a powerful alignment among the people who were involved in that process. But the thing is that unless you externalize that, it doesn't happen. So you have to externalize it, you have to simplify it, you have to put it to some visual form. So it's easier to communicate. It makes it possible to collaborate and make sense of it. So from these dark times to the good times with the help of visual thinking. I hope that helps you see why is it so helpful. And also, you see me doing that. I'm talking about this topic and I draw alone. So imagine you had to get a certain difficult message across and you did it in a similar way. It's so much more effective. So, Christina, over to you. And do you want to ping pong a bit on this topic, or what do you say?
No, I think that that you explained it really well, and I can just say that one of my favorite books is the story mapping book by Jeff Patton. I really like it, not just because of this metaphor, but because of how he deconstructs what a user does inside a product or service, or what a user journey is. I think it's a really clever method. So yeah, if you are interested in that stuff, if you are a designer or someone participating in digital product development, you should check that out. And yeah, so I think the key takeaway is that by externalizing our thoughts, we can reach a shared understanding. Okay, and now I think it's time for the little train exercise, right?
Yep.
So I just write it down here. Train exercise. Okay, and let's say that a friendly alien from outer space just lands on Earth. And by the way, it's already a beginning of a great story. So here is our friendly alien, waves to us, and for some reason he really interested in this. What is a train? And maybe we can start with a really simple definition that may come to your minds, to our minds. So maybe it's a way of moving things from point A to B. Let's say this is the first thing that comes to our mind. But is that specific enough? What do you think? Well, there are other types of transportation, so maybe it has some valuable insight in it, but I think it might be not enough. So let's say if we add something to the definition, a series of connected vehicles that run along a railroad. Okay, so now we have something to work with. We have a shared understanding of this, but how to explain it to this little alien and how to represent it. So, for instance, what if I just draw a rectangle? What do you think? Is that enough? Is it already recognizable or not? What if I do this? So it says, okay, connected vehicles. So I add one more. Is that enough? And yeah, I know that it runs on wheels and on a railroad track. And by the way, please notice that everything, every object can be deconstructed to basic shapes. So here you can see two rectangles, one connector line, some circles, and this horizontal line. And just really quickly, I would like to show you one cool book by add Emberley. It's called Make a Word, and it also has 2 huge pages on trains. So check that out if you want. But back to our train exercise. So here are the rectangle, the circles, and the lines. So these are basic shapes. But how can we make something recognizable? The first thing is that we should always add the most important characteristics. And labels also help. So if I say this is a train, you will instantly see this is a train, just like we did during the Squiggle word exercise. I said that those are birds, and you could instantly see this. But let's see, just put this together quickly. So the 2 rectangles, the connector line, the little wheels, and as you can see, I am simplifying the wheels now. These are just some curvy lines. I add the railroad track, and if we go back to our definition, what is missing? It says moving, but how does this moves? So let's quickly add a locomotive or engine here so that it will be able to really move along the railroad tracks. Maybe it has some bigger wheels and 2 small ones here. So this is how it moves. And if we look at the definition again, it says that moving things, and so what can it move? For example, it can be a passenger train. I can add little people here, or it can be a cargo or freight train. For example, it's loaded with coal or some other material. So you can already see that there are so many things to talk about, even if I say train. But what if we zoom in on some of these aspects or some of these parts? So let's look at what these little people are doing here on the train. And by the way, you can imagine another situation. I will quickly sketch out 2 people playing cards here, because it's a nice activity. I told you that I really like games. So here is maybe he's a child. Yeah, another seat, some legs quickly, some cards. And as you can see, my drawings are really simple. And maybe add a window to indicate the context. And maybe if we add a luggage holder, there is no longer a question that, yeah, we are inside some vehicle or transportation type. And what if we zoom into this horizontal line? Let's just quickly draw some more rectangles. And by the way, you can notice that by this exercise, I walk you through drawing a lot of basic shapes. So yeah, here are some rectangles, and then we connect these rectangles with some vertical lines. And this is the railroad track. Now you can see it from another perspective, basically. And let's talk quickly about how this train moves. And I just quickly move my camera so that you can see what I'm drawing. So let's say it's a steam engine, and I'm not an engineer, and I will oversimplify this, but so here is our coal, and our coal is heated up, and it heats some water. So here is the water. And don't worry if you don't have colors, you can always use labels. And there is a pipeline, I think, and there is a small valve that can go back and forth. And this valve somehow moves the wheels. So here are the wheels. And this is the way the steam engine works, that it generates some steam, the steam goes here, the valve goes back and forth, and by going back and forth, it makes the wheels turn. Yeah, and as you can see, there are so many things we can zoom in on to. And I just wait a bit so that you can finish your drawings or add some little details. Oh, I love your alien, Yuri, by the way. It's so cool.
Thank you.
And I will use this 1 second to ask you if you have any questions at this point. If not, I will continue with the train exercise, and don't worry, you will be able to complete your drawings later on.
And Christina, not a question, but just like an observation. When you were talking about what do we lack to set this train in motion, right? And then you added the engine unit. I unconsciously added those lines that usually convey the motion. So I just thought I should share that. Sometimes you, of course, you convey the structural understanding about something by decomposing it into a meaningful system where you have an engine and carriages and stuff like that. But sometimes you add the notion of action using those so-called emanatas. And in this case, you can show that this train is moving. Just a small observation I wanted to share with the rest.
Thank you very much. I love emanatas. I love comics. And understanding comics is one of my favorite books. I will quote Scott McCloud in a bit. But yeah, so thanks for the addition, and then let's move on to looking at trains as a system. And stay with me, please. It's going to be really exciting. So a train as a system. Okay. So to put it simply, a system consists of interconnected parts. So there are a lot of parts inside the system, and there are many types of relationships of these parts inside the system, and these parts work together to reach certain goals. And let's just quickly recreate our little train. You already know how it's done. And by the way, you can add these little emanatas that indicate that it's moving. So this is one rectangle and the wheels, connector line, rectangle, the wheels. And let's just add one more. And don't forget our little steam engine, because thanks to this, our train can move. Two big wheels and smaller ones, and the horizontal line. Okay, so let's look at this system. How can we analyze it? Can we spot any interesting relationships inside this system? For instance, these wagons are optional. But this one is not optional. Without this, the train won't be able to move. So this is a dependency inside this system. And there is also a strict sequence. So this one here should be the first or the last one, since this is the one that pulls or pushes the train. And we can also see some connections. So these ones are connected and can't change their order in any situation. There are certain situations when it can be rearranged, but not anytime. And here is a huge constraint because it runs along a railroad track. So if we think about this system, it's really important to take this into account also. And we can also recognize some part and whole relationships. So a wagon can be one unit, and there are the wheels, which are parts of this unit. But there are a lot more of these. It's just an example. So part for relationship. And as you can see, by the way, this yellow and the white paper don't have enough contrast between each other. So that's why I apply these black marks too. Okay, and of course, there are many, many different attributes of this train. So just quickly list out some. And I would like you to list this out, because I just want to tell you that if you want to have a more legible handwriting, you should use all capital letters. It really helps legibility. So there is a direction, there can be a speed, different stops, and if there are stops, there can be a timetable. And there are different wagon types, for example, a tanker. As we discussed, there are passenger trains and cargo trains. And there is a steam engine, but it can be electric or diesel. There is a whole staff that operates a train, for example, a train conductor, and it can be a local train or an international train. And trains can have numbers and can be registered into a database. So there are really, really many attributes we could talk about, and we could show to this little alien. And there are many related concepts. So things that are closely connected to the mental model of trains. So for instance, there are train stations. And, yeah. So let's just quickly sketch out a train station. And I believe that one of the most important characteristics is this clock here, so you always know what time it is. Are you late or not? Maybe it has big windows and a huge door. And again, I can apply the label train station, so it helps to convey the meaning. And just one quickly note here is that just as we created the workbook in the beginning, you can also start your own visual library the same way. So just get some paper and fold it, and you can save these icons that you like, or you feel that you want to use in the future, and it will give you confidence to just practice drawing these icons. And of course, you can also use sticky notes, and just like a Panini album, you can stick these, and later, when you are confident enough, you can put this here in the library. It's just a quick addition. I don't know, Yuri, if you want to add on to this aspect, but if not, just continue with some more icons.
No, so I just want just to support you on that one. It's quite valuable and useful to try and exercise the vocabulary for icons, because once you at least train it once, hopefully more than once, you can establish a habit of drawing that thing next time, so you don't have to be stressed about it. It's really helpful as a practice.
Right, thanks. So one more related aspect is, for example, a tunnel. If we encounter a difficult terrain and our train has to go through a mountain or a hill, and a train can interact with other types of transportation or traffic. So here is a level crossing, and At a train station, there are platforms. So maybe here is a little timetable. Here is the perron or platform, sorry. And this is the passenger waiting, and the train has arrived. And just one more thing, again, I just want you to practice these basic shapes. We can also quickly sketch out a train ticket. So these are just some of the related concepts of trains. And as you can see, me and Yuri, we like to add some colors and shading to these icons. There is just one important thing: it looks better if it's consistent, and usually I drew this on this part of the icons. So I imagine that that the light source is somewhere here, but of course you can always choose a different approach. It just adds volume to your drawing and help you drive the viewer's attention. And we already zoomed in, so before summarizing the key takeaways of this exercise, let's just quickly zoom out a bit. And here is an icon for a map, and it's really easy to draw. Just draw a wide W like this, and underneath it, draw another one like this. And then you can connect these points with some vertical lines, and boom, you have your map. This is where the treasure is. Or here is another possible icon for a map. And you can see that there is no one right icon. You can represent things with many different icons. And what a map is a representation of a space or area. And the nice thing is that it's not only about physical spaces. So for example, if you think about a customer journey map or an empathy map, it can also contain the problem space of the customer or a persona. So back to our trains, we can also sketch out a train system map, and that way we add the dimension of space. We can just quickly show distances and the connections, and we can plan out our journey with the train. And sorry, Australians, but this is Australia, and and here are the most important cities or train stops. And yeah, it's just very roughly, this is the train system map of Australia. And just to practice drawing straight lines, let's just finish this map and give it a nice frame. So this map help you think about the spatial relationships, just as Yuri said earlier. Oh, Yuri, you are cheating. Oh, by the way, cheating is great. Cheating is great. Yeah, it's always a good idea. If you don't know how to sketch out something, just search for it on Google, and yeah, there are many nice icon libraries, and yeah, I will link some of these on the Miro board for you. But back to the maps, let me tell you a quick story where a really simplified map helped. And by the way, it was told by Dan Rome in his book. And it's the story of Southwest Airlines. And it starts with two men walks into a bar, but really this was the story, and it was 1967. And they were about to close their previous airline, and on the back of a cocktail napkin, they just quickly mapped out their new idea, because in Texas there are three main cities: San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston. And they had the idea that it would be awesome to just concentrate on these 3 cities and have straight connections between these 3. And that way, they can be more efficient. And it turned out to be a great success. And it was on the back of a napkin, because you see, at this time, other airlines used a so-called hub and spoke model. So there was a huge hub, and you could reach other areas by going to this hub first. So that's why they were so successful. And this little, very simple diagram and simplified map helped them to come up with this great business model and idea. And until this point, we talked about static things, but what if we introduce the time dimension and we can show processes too? And let's just quickly sketch out the process of buying a train ticket. So what would be the first step? Well, maybe there is a search option, and you add the destination, the date and time, passengers. You indicate whether it's one way or a return ticket. So you search for the trains, then you get a list of the trains you can choose from. And as you can see, I use very, very simplified little marks on the page. So I can select from the available trains. Then what else? Maybe I want to sit next to the aisle. So I set some preferences. Then maybe it asks me to give my personal information. So it's passenger info. Then I can pay for the ticket. So pay. And in some cases, you need to search for a machine at the train station and get and validate your ticket to be able to use it. And then the last thing is that to enjoy the ride. So this is a very simplified process of buying a train ticket, and just imagine that our little alien is interested in that. So there might be a company behind this whole thing, and if there is a company, maybe you have to give them money to use their service. So you can see that from one really simple concept, we could really extend it and talk about many more things. And let me know if you have any questions or if you want to show us your drawings, because the next step is that I would like to summarize the key takeaways of this train exercise. Oh, someone asked what was the name of the book that contains the basic shapes. I can show it to you quickly. And I will link it on the Miro board too. So it's Make a Word by Ed Emberley. Okay, so let's summarize this training exercise, and you will understand why I was taking you through this whole thing. So train exercise, key takeaways. Cool. And by the way, let me know if I am too fast and you need just one more minute or two to finish your drawings. Okay, so here you can see.
You're not too fast, I'm too slow.
Okay. Okay. But, you know, it's not about speed, so just take it easy and capture information. So maybe I should switch on this light here. So maybe it's better.
Thank you.
I just switch on some more lights so that all can finish your drawings. Yeah. So this is the system with all the different aspects and elements and dimensions we talked about. So let's just indicate that there are really a lot of things inside this system. And the thing is that we filter through this information and select the things that are relevant for us in the given context. So let's quickly sketch out a funnel. So this is a rectangle. And then you can turn the page if it's easier. And you draw two lines that get closer to each other and close it. This is a really simple funnel. And you can label this mess here that these are the aspects, elements, dimensions, everything we talked about earlier. And so we filter through this information because we want to focus on specific things that support our story, the thing we want to communicate, or we focus on the problem we want to understand, or on the problem we want to solve. So what is the story you want to tell? And based on this, you select certain aspects and certain information that are relevant in your context. And you focus on these. And so here is the very complex concept. And by the way, you can see that squiggles are very useful. So here is the very complex concept of a train. And by reducing complexity, we can effectively communicate the meaning and we can effectively ideate, for example, if we want. Oops, that's not straight enough. By the way, it's really okay to make mistakes. So by choosing the information that is relevant to us, we can establish a meaningful information hierarchy. We can drive our own attention and, of course, the viewer's attentions too. So, yeah, we discussed that there are different zoom levels, and not only zoom levels, but there are different detail levels or fidelity levels. So here is the train versus we could also draw this. And add some specific details. For example, windows and doors and the number of the train or the colors. And do we need these specific details? Specific details. And it always depends on the context and our goal. Because if we know the context and what we want to communicate or what problem we want to solve, we can choose the specific details we should include. And it's equally important to decide on what to leave out. Because that way you can really focus your efforts. So the level of detail or fidelity is very important. And I call this whole concept something like goal-directed sketching or visual thinking. And it's not a buzzword in any way. I just wanted to summarize this whole concept. And by slicing out the things you want to explain, so by creating meaningful slices from reality, you can convey the meaning and you can get your message through. So this is the key takeaway of this exercise, and I just quickly want to add my favorite quote from this Understanding Comics book. And Scott McCloud says that by stripping down an image to its essential meaning, we can amplify that meaning. So it means that by leaving out unnecessary details and concentrating on the important things, you can really tell the story you want to tell. And over to you, Yuri.
So the next topic is now what makes a good visual storytelling. Let's start from the new page and let's talk about what constitutes a good storytelling. Yep, I will mention 4 qualities I think which I think are important, and we will explore those a bit. So a good storytelling is engaging. So what I mean here? Well, when we deal with that complex information, and when even if we try to choose the slicing that is specific to the context, right? We still need to overcome that lizard barrier. We need to somehow convince the person or a group of people we're talking to that this is important to them. And it's not important to people if they cannot recognize themselves in there. Or let's say that's one of the quickest way to bridge that indifference, so that they can see emotion behind it, they can see a human behind it, and they could see themselves in the story. So we want a story somehow built around a human, a character, and we also want to show some emotion, because we don't exercise empathy unless we can recognize emotions that are close or familiar to us. So let's say engaging means that there is a hero to empathize with, and it's emotional. And I think it's interesting to remember what Susan brought up yesterday as a part of 5 things important to know about the people, that actually there is not a single decision that is made with people without an emotion, right? She mentioned that if you have your emotional center damaged due to a trauma, you cannot make even a simple decision about having a cup of tea, right? How scary it is. So if you don't insert emotion into a story, then it's going to be really difficult to convince people it's valuable for them to follow along. So that takes us to the next one, valuable. So what we mean here? Valuable, it means that if you tell a story in a professional setting, it has to objectively be of a value, meaning that there is a certain system understanding, there is a certain information conveyed, an explanation of how something works. It has to have the content. It cannot be just something. It has to do something with learning a new stuff. It has to be given an insight or offer a knowledge for the audience. So once you bridge that empathetic barrier, make sure that whatever you brought with you is valuable. And then again, we can refer back to this contextual filter and funnel that Christina mentioned. That's where you try to understand what would be valuable to them. But luckily, it's easier in a professional setting. You can guess what is valuable. Hopefully so. A good story is organized. What we mean here is that, again, I really like the way Christina suggested that usually we deal with systems full of aspects and attributes and components. But whenever we deal with a certain contextual situation, when we need to delve into that, to explain, explore, we want to find a smaller subset. And that's what is making a good story organized. So you try to understand what is the minimum amount of information that you need to convey, so that you do not clutter, do not confuse, and so that you leave out the rest. And that's not easy. It has to be practiced, and also it is very context sensitive, meaning that you will probably need to learn what is unnecessary and what is necessary to this group or to this person. But that is still essential for building a solid and a valuable and a good story. So find that essential core thing. So we're talking about a core idea here, trying to nail it. What is the core idea? What is essential to the situation at hand? And how can you minimize it so it's easy to understand? Right? So it's not enough just to focus on the value and emotion alone. You have to really learn to organize it. And finally, a good storytelling must be inspiring. Oh, well, okay, I botched inspiring. I botched the writing here, but that's fine. We don't care about mistakes as long as it's valuable, as long as you understand what I'm talking about. So what is inspiring? Inspiring means that you don't share an information just for fun. It's a time-consuming, energy-consuming exercise, and you usually do that because you want to incite an action. You want your audience say, yes, I know what I'm going to do with this now, right? So you want them to get to something, to their next step. So you want your audience to imagine themselves and project their next step towards some objective or goal. And you want to give them the confidence and determination. That's where it's important to think about when we come up with a story. How can you put it so the person will care about it enough, and afterwards they want to change something? For example, their behavior. They want to purchase your product. Developers want to implement your insights you've collected in your discovery, or something else. Or maybe you want your colleagues to work differently. You want to change. You want them to share it further along, because a good story is the one that lives after you shared it. Because if it does not get a viral spread, then usually it's a bad story. And then you want them to do something, right? For example, you want them to buy a ticket. You tell a story how to do that, and now they understand and they want to buy it. So those are the aspects of a good story. And just to stop in here for a moment, to suggest you what is still lacking here, because you learned quite a good deal how to organize and focus on value through the train exercise demonstrated by Christina. And this is covered. You have the theory, and hopefully you're inspired enough to practice and learn how to dissect this yarn ball of systemic information to find what is really needed and valuable. What we are going to cover going forward is that we will try to understand how to help you get your stories more engaging by learning to create characters through the use of human depictions and emotions. And then when it comes to inspiring, honestly, neither me nor Christina can teach you that. That only comes through practice. You need to practice the art and craft of storytelling to learn how to make your narrative inspiring enough. So we can get you up to speed here and give you some nice tools to overcome the fear of drawing, so you know how to depict emotions and create your heroes. But this guy here, inspiring, comes through practice, through failures and learnings and tough learnings. But hopefully, with enough inspiration here, you will want to iterate, so you learn to get your stories inspiring. Alrighty. Without any further ado, we're moving on to the next page. And the next page is about building simple characters with emotion alone. So simple characters. Based on, well, in brackets, emotions. In this chapter, we will learn emotions and how to create really simple characters that could do the job of storytelling for you. So once again, you have basic shapes. And it's implied that you guys can draw any of those, right? It's really, really simple. A triangle, a square, a circle. You should be able to do that. So simple shapes. And in this chapter, we will stay within the realm of just simple shapes. And you can create a character out of it. I'll show you how simple it is. Let's say you're working on a document management system and you want to create a Mr. Doki or something. And here you go. You just draw a rectangle, maybe fold the corner a bit so it looks like a sheet of paper. And what is lacking there to get it to a character? Well, we like characters to look like human, humanize them. So, for example, add legs and arms. That's already a good progression. Something is still lacking here, emotion, right? We cannot recognize the face. It's blank. So we don't know, is it hostile? Is it friendly? Our lizard brain is just clicking right now. Should I run? Should I fight? What should I do? Okay, so let's agree that this is a friendly character. So that's it. You just took a simple shape and you added emotion and humanized it with adding some limbs. And that's it. That's your Mr. Document for your next presentation, if you like. And just for the sake of fun, remember this simple character created by Microsoft company, Mr. Clippy, right? That's also a character created out of the squiggle representing the paperclip, and that's your character. Maybe not the most, maybe not the most successful or the best example of a character, but still, yeah, it's recognizable. Yeah, and also when it comes to people and you struggle drawing people, and we will learn to draw simple people later, but even if we don't do this now, I can tell you that if you draw just a face like this, eyes, brows, and mouth, it can really replace a need to draw a fully fledged depiction of a person, So just like that, you could just draw a human by drawing a smiley, a circle with a certain emotion. So now we need to learn how to create the emotion that is needed for the context of the situation. We can learn that an emotion is conveyed really through three major components. It's the brows, it's the eyes, and the mouth. That's all you need in most situations. And of course, it's not that simple. You could really up your game if you learn additional elements. But for the most cases, like 99.9999 and so on, you can just get away with these three components. Now, sometimes you don't even need them, but it's a bit more difficult. I will show you how to use different emanatas to convey certain emotions. So let's say we have those four just basic shape characters. If you add emanata like this, what does it say? We are so educated by reading comic books, watching cartoons, and even sometimes the comedies have those edited special effects. We know that usually it's a surprise. And you know what? I will imply that you agree. And if you don't, just speak up. Just unmute yourself and speak up. And then this type of emanata is usually either angry or upset. So basically a negative type of emotion. Okay, if you disagree, just speak up. Otherwise, I would just assume that you recognize these things. Now, these what you call it, sharp shapes, cornered like zigzag shapes. It's some sort of a stress. A pain, for example, like a pain point with your customer when you map out journey. And then another, there are many of them. I'm just giving you those that are mostly used, most commonly used. And you can look up on the Google to learn more. But the fourth I'm going to mention is the emanata of the direction of where your character is looking. Just draw the dotted lines. I'm not sure if you can see that, if the resolution of camera is enough, but this is a dotted line that usually suggests the direction of where your character is looking at, direction of sight. Okay, so you can see that, okay, sometimes you could use some emanata just to quickly and really low fidelity convey emotion. But if you need a more elaborate aspect of it, a flavor, a certain flavor of emotion, then three elements. And I will show you how it works. So I will create 3 rows of 4 squares, 4 faces, giving us 12 emotions that okay, all right, 11. I a bit messed it up. So it was supposed to be a matrix 3x4, but anyway, doesn't matter. So these are just some placeholders, and I will just show you how different combinations of these elements, those facial elements, working together as a team can create a strongly recognizable emotion. So I will start with this one. What does it look like, Christina? It's like, huh? Right?
Sorry, I was unmuted. But yeah, he
like
stopped for a moment and asked, what's going on?
Yeah, wondering. I'm wondering, what does this button do? Mm-hmm. What about this one?
Yeah, and you can type in the chat your solution, by the way. So feel free to participate.
So I hope that you agree this is the surprised one.
Yeah, right. Like with the
And
lifted eyebrows and the open mouth.
yeah, like what is going on here,
Yeah.
right? And then this one here, it's the Homer Simpson, the dough. So basically, a frustrated person, right? Frustrated. And this one here, it's basically angry. He or she doesn't like our solution. So we created a new feature. We updated the application, and that's how our end user looks like. And then we bend the browse the other way and do like this. And suddenly that's a sad person feeling blue. And what about this one? So you can see her mouth is twisted now, like a wavy line. It's stressed. It's a stressed person, right? Maybe overworked.
Yeah.
And then see, we sometimes can close the eyes like this, and even show our mouth open, and maybe I just leave a stripe of white, uncolored white here to suggest some teeth. It's excited, right? So I'm so excited. Oh, I heard some news. I'm so excited about it. And then let's leave out the brows and just put a short mark that is just flat. It's neutral, right? So indifferent. And it can be a different story. It could be like, okay, not impressed. I'm looking at your new feature and no, doesn't click with me. Or just like, I'm fine, it's okay. How do you do this week?
Yeah,
it's okay.
That's the middle option when you have to give feedback.
Yeah. And the last line I was leaving out, and I needed 4 frames, but I botched it up. Anyway, you can place your eyes and mouth in different parts of the circle to suggest the direction. So, for example, when you do like this, also reinforced by the dotted line, you could suggest that this person is having a pseudo 3D nature to it, right? So it's looking somewhere downwards to her right, and so forth. You could do this like upwards and downwards and so on. So you could even play with the direction of where the face is looking toward. Alrighty. So
and Yuri, someone asked to sketch out tired.
Tired?
Yeah.
Well, okay. So maybe something like this.
And we can add the Z, from comic books.
Yeah, and maybe add a kind of a wavy line coming off the head, so that overheated, or maybe even add a couple of what you call those like eye sacs or something, that you're really tired, exhausted almost, right?
Yeah, or yawning.
Or yawning, right? Yeah. Oh, I like it. Yeah, here you go. So now I will show you that it's pretty much enough just to know how to do this stuff to already be able to tell a story. I call it a story in 4 steps. Well, I'm not the one who invented this anyway. Just let's give it a name. Story in 4 frames, okay? It's just like a mini comic, really. And I want you to draw shapes. Like draw a shape. So let's say we have 4 frames here, right? And draw a shape like a circle here and a square next to it in this frame. Then draw a square and slightly offset the circle to the left. Here, keep your square in the same location and continue to move away a circle away from the square. So this distance is increasing. And then finally, in the final frame, put it somewhere very, very far away from the square. So that's the preset of our story. It's pre-designed. I just want to show you how simple it is to tell a story with just basic shapes. So let's say our circle here is happy, and the square is looking to the side because it's trying to face the circle here. Both are positive, and our circle says, "Hey, how are you?" Right? And then he says, "Look what I can do." And he's very enthusiastic. And then he starts rolling, right? While talking, like, because he can do that. And our square, he's like, "Whoa, how do you do that?" Right? And then our circle, he or she continues rolling. So let's try to imagine where the eyes and mouth would be. So he's continuing rolling, and there is no dialogue, but our square here is like, "Huh? What is that you're doing?" And then when the circle arrives to its final destination, the circle says, "Ta-da!" And then our square is like, "Okay, that was a show off. I cannot do that," right? So you can see that really the emotions are not that difficult to nail. You just need to learn how different combination of really simply drawn strokes work together to convey the evolution of emotion. And it's just a funny story, but the moral of it is that you could use the same techniques when you tell a story about a user experience, a customer's experience with the services, or if you're working on the internal processes, you can tell a story about how employees feel about a certain process to help your group get up to speed and actually see where the pain points are, see where the benefits of a change are. So that's pretty much it. So here I deliberately left some free space. I would like to ask you to do something outside of this workshop and come up with your story about the basic shapes. And that will be your homework. And if you like, post it with a hashtag. And the hashtag is basic shapes stories. So just if you like, of course, no pressure. And I would love to see your stories. Use something like this, a combination of some funny situation involving basic shapes and some emotions, and of course the labels allowing us to understand what's going on there. So that's our homework, and we are speeding fast to the next topic. And the next topic is building a human character. Because you might not be satisfied with just creating super simplified characters based off shapes and emotions, and I get it. So I also want to break an ice for you when it comes to drawing humans. Now, I personally can draw humans in different style, super simplified and more or less elaborate. I'm not a good artist myself. But I think what will be good for you if you're a complete noob when it comes to drawing people is some sort of a middle solution in terms of fidelity and complexity. And I will call him like 3 heads person. 3 heads because his height is his 3 or her 3 heads. So where we start is that we divide the height of the to-be person in 3 equal parts, right? And we don't do that explicitly. I do that for the demonstration, but you kind of keep that in mind when you project your future character. So you just mentally divide the height in 3 equally sized units. And in the first third, you put a circle for the head. I mean, give or take, it doesn't have to be super precise. It's just like to give you a ballpark guidance to draw that. Then in the remaining 2/3, draw the torso leg line in one move. So like that. Slightly slanted is fine. And then the end of the torso is something you put here, like in the last third. Okay, that gives you the torso, the head, and the legs. Now you need to finish off the arms. Keep them the same length as legs, so like roughly 1/3 of the height. And finish it off with really simplified facial features we already talked about: eyes, mouth, and maybe brows, something like that. Okay, so that gives you a super simple, easy to draw a person. So let's call him a simple person. So you have this head, the torso, and the arms. I think it's important to keep in mind this torso leg movement to make it simpler. The figure will look more organic if you do that in one move. And if you double click here on the torso, what I would like to recommend is to keep the torso the so-called brick proportion, where one side is 2 times shorter than another. So it's like 2 squares combined, basically. That's the proportion of the torso. And usually I don't bother differentiating drawing women and men, but you could say that if you wanted a body that would look a bit more female, you could just do something like this, right? So you could suggest a dress-like garment. Yeah, but I don't want to be a sexist here, so I don't know if that's the method that could work. But if you are really concerned about, can I differentiate female, male body, maybe you could use something like that. But usually I don't bother much about that. Now, one trick to make your simple characters look more organic is to learn how to bend torso. Right now, please draw 4 curves, arcs like that. And that is the curve of a spine that runs through the torso. So basically what you need to learn is to mentally imagine how your torso bends depending on the situation and the posture of the character, and learn how to bend that torso brick along the spine line, right? So you really need to learn how to see that and be able to render the curvature of your torso that is appropriate to the posture you're going to draw. Where do we need them? We need them, for example, when the person is seated or is bending to pick something up from the ground, stuff like that. So if you don't bend it in the arc way, your characters will look a bit like robots, right? So they just like move like this and they don't bend, and it's not nice. So you just need to do that a few times to learn, like, okay, I feel comfortable now conveying the bending posture. And let's just draw quickly 4 people here to see how it's playing out. So let's say we'll start with just vertical person, not bending anything, right? So then then the person looks something like this, right? So it's okay, but maybe it's only okay when you draw a passenger waiting on the platform for the train, or maybe a person standing in the queue to withdraw cash from the ATM. But you cannot really use that posture all the time. And let's see what happens when we bend the person. It's like, oh, then something in your face, something unexpected happened, and that person really looks surprised because it tries to lean back. Something happened, right? So you can see how learning to bend the torso could help you convey a deeper context about the emotional or the action of the situation. And then in another situation, if we bend a person forward, right? So we can draw the hands, how you call it, dangling down, right? And then someone asked for a tired person, so that's the tired person returning from a long day at the office, right? So you can see that it's bent forward and it's tired. You can see that in the posture. And of course, augmented by the facial emotion and by this emanata coming off the head. That's easier to see. And then finally, without bending the torso, but given this kind of a shrugged shoulders posture, you can draw like a super angry person, like something stepping into the branch of your bank and like, I want my money back kind of situation. So just to give you a few examples how you can play with the bending of the torso, emotion, and the emanata to give your character a richer context. And that's where we stop with people. And I want to suggest you a homework to do, okay? Because people are tricky and you can only learn if you practice drawing them enough. But it would be a shame if we only drew people in this workshop and did not pay attention to storytelling bits enough. So I want to save more time for that. But please promise me, if you like the idea, to practice a bit. And the way to go about it is to Google, like, how do I doodle a character, a human character. So let's agree that you do the following after the workshop, maybe next week or over the weekend. So a person sitting at her desk, sitting at a desk. And then a person picking something up from the ground, right? So maybe he or she found a credit card on the ground. Then here I want you to draw two people shaking hands. A forbidden and long forgotten social gesture. Someday you will be explaining to your grandchildren, like, what does it mean to shake hands? Okay. Withdrawing cash from an ATM, right? How could it look like? Pointing at something. And finally, sketching something on a whiteboard. So standing next to a flip chart or a whiteboard and sketching something out. So sketching on a whiteboard. Okay, so these are 6 prompts I would like you to do following this method of a 3 heads person, trying to understand how to compose the posture. Feel free to use Google as your helper. You don't have to do it yourself. You can find something just to copy, copycat it, and that's totally fine, as long as you practice and make sure that you build up your confidence. Alrighty, I think we're moving on to the next bit.
Yeah, I just wanted to underline that that you should always look for inspiration on the internet or inside books, and we will share with you a lot of people that you should follow, because you will find your style if you practice it, but by copying the other visual thinker heroes is the way how I mean me and Yuri learned this. So yeah, just do your homework. And I forgot to mention at the end of the train exercise, because I think we really needed a break at that point, is that if you want to practice, there is a homework related to the train exercise too. So if you want, you can continue my thinking and, for example, explain or show the last time you took the train, and you can take this mini comic approach that Yuri already showed you with the circle and the square. And we will continue this this approach by showing you the method of storyboarding. And I am sure that many of you already know this method, but for you, my suggestion is that you should still draw along with us and practice visual thinking. So let's just quickly start with sketching out 3 frames here. And as you can see, I turned the paper a bit, so it's easier for me to sketch out straight lines like this. And so storyboarding is not really surprisingly is a story of a persona or a customer or user, or really anyone we want to understand. And a storyboard shows the problem space and the context of use of this persona. And the important thing is that it's always from the customer's perspective. So how she experiences things, what she feels and thoughts and so on. And it's also very useful to add some commentary or annotations to each frame. So here you can add the narrative and what is inside the storyboard. There is the hero of the story, so the customer, and our customer has certain goals and needs and motivation. And of course, she has some thoughts, and there are some problems and obstacles and pain points. It takes place somewhere, so there are places, there is a context of use. So if it's there daylight or weather conditions that are important, you should include these too. Of course, you should include the solution to the initial problem. And there are some other things you might want to include if you need it. Again, I would like to refer back to the train exercise. You should leave out the unimportant details here, but if it's important who the persona encounters, what are the other roles inside the story, or the tools she uses, the workflows she applies, then include these too. And of course, our characters can talk. So these are the main parts. Just let me add this really quickly, parts. And it's really important to only include the key moments. So imagine that these are snapshots of the emotional high and low points of the persona or the customer. So emotional high and low points. And what could these be? For example, the main obstacles or the major decision-making points, and we can also include some celebration. So these are the emotional high points. And I thought that maybe I should quickly sketch out a palm tree here, because this is an emotional high point, some sand, and our customer just arrived to this island. It's something we can't do these days. So it's nice to just remember these things. So finally, I am here. And of course, you cannot color too, but again, I would like to highlight that in case of storyboards, you want to guide the viewer's attention, leave out unnecessary details. And for example, here, you can see that I only added this mobile phone. So it's only an indication. There is no user interface included. So these are the main parts, the narrative, the key frames or key moments, and all the important aspects I told about. But why are we using storyboards in the first place? Because first, we can empathize with customers, users, employers, teachers, students, so really anyone. It will help you understand his or her problems and context. So it's a great empathy tool, but it's also great for identifying the focus areas. So what should we concentrate our efforts on, for example, during a product development process? And we can also ideate by using storyboards, meaning that after getting to know the problem space, we can come up with some solutions. And then we can also validate our solutions by, for example, showing it to domain experts or showing it to users. And we can ask them that, is this problem really exist? And we can also show the possible solutions. And by doing this, we can also identify so-called magic moments, things that wouldn't happen this way in reality. We just thought that they would happen this way, but no, it was a false assumption. And speaking of assumptions, we can also spot things that are only assumptions, and we should research it further. Yeah, so here is as you can see, I am adding a really quick, simple icons to my text here. And we can also spot holes in our concept. So this is our concept with some holes. And as Yuri mentioned in the beginning, it really facilitates a shared understanding inside a team, or you can help the client understand the problem space better. And just one more thing, that we can also map out what can go wrong at each steps. So we can show that too. And as for the scope of storyboarding, there are really two kinds of scopes. We can create current state storyboards. This means that we are creating a storyboard of the present moment of the currently available solutions, and we can also create future state storyboards. And future state storyboards show an imagined reality in which our new product or service or solution already exists, and it shows how we can solve the problem for the customer. And just to really quickly show you a template for the storyboarding, just quickly create 6 rectangles. Here is the narrative underneath, and it always starts with some problem. So this is the trigger, and there always should be a solution to the problem, and there are steps in between, and it doesn't matter how many steps you include as much as you need. Here, I think we will use these 6 frames method. And so just really quickly, this is your process. You create the plot. So what is the trigger or the problem, the key moments and the solution. Then it might be a good idea to first think about the script. So maybe the 6 key sentences. Then you can design the frames if you want, but in this case, we already have a template. And finally, you should always ask for feedback and iterate based on this feedback. And yeah, this was the idea of the storyboarding in a nutshell. I have some materials on this topic that we will link in the Miro board for you. And so now Yuri will show you how storyboarding is done in practice. We will show you a problem that you might also have or had in the past. And we will create a storyboard together.
So that takes us to the last step in our journey today. Before we enter the Q&A, of course, is to demonstrate an application of this fantastic tool to a made-up situation, but hopefully still close to your home. Yeah, I hope to finish it maybe in 5-7 minutes. Then we can break and then continue in a Q&A. Alrighty, so have your spread ready. We will need 2 pages. I want to really zoom in, and one page would be a bit too small for that. So basically, create an A4 size, and that's going to be our example storyboard. And here we will need to break every page in 4 more or less equally sized cells. So I'll draw a line here, and this is the natural line, so I don't need to draw it. And then I will draw a line in here too. And just one line crossing both pages horizontally. So that gives me 4, not 4, but 2 times 4 cells. We will only use 6 of them, and I will keep these 2 empty. And I will show you not only the example of a storyboard, but also suggest you some tips and tricks how to organize that as a collaborative exercise. Christina mentioned that it's important that you don't do storyboards in full isolation. It's a revelation tool, meaning that you will find blind spots. You will find unexpected perspectives. It's really cool if you engage the entire team, and preferably when it's possible, your customer or an end user, because that's a collaborative effort. And then if we remember what Christina mentioned, we have the start and the end, right? So usually we know like what is the setting where we start and where do we want to end in this exercise. Now I'll just move it a bit to the side. And hold on a second. I'll adjust it a little bit. Okay, something like that. So it's easier to have a full view of the pages. And what you could do is actually you could start and map these things out. So for example, here I want to have a setting, the start of my story. And here I want to have my final resolution, right, where I want to end. And then let's say the particular, yeah, it was supposed to be here, but anyway, doesn't matter. What is the actual content of the story is that a person dealing with the mess around their subscriptions, right? So right now we are consuming a lot of digital products, Spotify, Netflix, HBO. There is a lot of offerings around the subscription-based business models. And I personally am struggling a lot from not knowing what's going on. How much money do I spend on a monthly basis? And sometimes it leaves me feeling like dying from 1,000 of cuts. So each of the subscriptions is not that bad, but I don't really have an overview of how much money I do spend on those digital subscriptions. So I want to explore that problem with my team. And I want to convey the context of the situation through a storyboarding exercise. So I want to start with a setting. I want to buy a new subscription. Oh, what am I doing? Want to buy a new subscription. That's my start of the story. And in the end, I assume that the problem is I'm anxious about not having a full overview and control over my subscriptions. So in the end, I want to have a feeling that I have a full control over my subscriptions. And let's agree that we will only use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 squares. I will just leave these squares out just for the simplicity. But in general, there are no limits to how many keyframes you want to use in your storyboards. It's just recommended that you try to keep stuff simple and increase complexity as you need it. In most cases, you can tell a story about something really complex in 6 steps, but if you need more, you need more. That there is no rule or law for that, but just keep in mind that the simplicity is your friend. So then that's where I start. That's where I want to land. And now I need to find the key points that I want to convey to the team so we could have a meaningful discussion around this problem. So I want to convey I want to convey 2 major pain points, I assume, around it. First one is, in one frame, I want to say that there are too many subscriptions, and too many meaning that it's not 1 or 2, and therefore I cannot keep them mentally in a good overview. I don't have that, right? Because I cannot remember 7, 8, 10, or whatever subscriptions. And another pain point I am assuming, and I want to explore in this conversation, is that probably I, as a person, might be concerned that do I have enough money to support my ambitions, my appetite? Do I have enough money? And I start with those 2 key pain points. So the story starts with a person willing to buy a new subscription, and then like, oh wait, but how many do I have already? And do I have enough money to just, to expand the universe of my subscriptions? And then I want to talk to the team like, I have an idea about a solution, right? And I want to ask them, do they think that a solution as a mobile app is a good idea, right? Because I remember we are lizard people and we like to jump into conclusions about solutions. We cannot help ourselves. So why don't I just accept that fact and bring my solution forward and say, hey, I'm not saying we should do this, but let's talk about what came to my mind, and then feel free to criticize, right? So I'll just externalize that for a meaningful conversation. And then when I'm done with the structural understanding of what goes into that mobile application, I will suggest main features that come together with a solution, regardless whether it's a mobile application or something else, right? So that's how I decomposed my story into major steps, key frames. Now I can do the following. even before drawing anything. I liked something that Christina mentioned, is that focus on low or high as far as emotional state goes, right? What happens here is you could help yourself by nudging the dominating emotion in that keyframe. So here, for example, in the setting, I would assume that the dominating emotion is the anticipation of something great. Oh, I want something, right? So I don't want to buy a subscription because I like buying subscriptions. I buy a subscription because something really attracted me. So there is a good anticipation there. And I want to explore what could trigger such an anticipation. Here, I'm starting to worry. I don't know how many subscriptions do I own. So I want to convey an essence of a worry. So I put just a small smiley there, just to remind myself what is that I'm trying to convey. Here I'm wondering, do I have enough money, right? So I could like say, it's not like anxiety here, but it's but I need to analyze, do I have money? A solution is I want to convey that it's something new and nobody else has it, so there is a wow effect, right? I want to convince the team that if we do this with the mobile application, it's going to be wow effect, because nobody else has done that before. And the main features, I want to convey the emotional state of my hero, that they are like positive confident, right? With these features, they calm down their anxieties and they get the confidence for their decisions. And then finally, when they are using our application, I want to show that they are super satisfied, they're excited with our solution. So now that I helped myself with choosing the right angle and the right amount of content that goes into this storytelling, I can basically go wild and just sketch whatever I think is appropriate, right? So for example, what could make a person get that positive anticipation? Let's say, and I will speak on my personal behalf here. There are those posters of Mandalorian all over the place, and actually, I'm looking at those. I'm a big fan of Star Wars, and I'm like, but it's Disney, and but it's Mandalorian, right? And a small Yoda. What's not to like? So I will draw my personal affection to the team, and I will draw this. Um, uh, what is that? A Boba Fett, or who is that guy? I forgot who is the son, who is the father. And then we will draw a little small cute Yoda there. And the guy is looking at the poster reading Mandalorian. And also by Disney, right? Like, yay, I want Mandalorian. I want to watch that series. But yeah, I want to subscribe. I understand that I need to subscribe because it's not something I own already, right? So I need to subscribe. Yeah, so that's my thought when I'm looking at that poster. Oh, cool stuff, and I want to watch it, so I need to subscribe. So then the worry comes, then the anxiety comes. Like, hold on a second, but maybe I already have a subscription that could have me covered, right? I lost a track of those, so I want to draw a customer in the middle of the frame. And I just got entangled in the. That's actually why you don't want to have a lot of pens, right? You get confused which to use. One pen is better. Okay, too much complexity. So this guy is now confused, like, oh my goodness. And that person is like holding their head, like, oh, but hold on a second. I'm paying for Netflix, and I am paying for HBO, and hold on a second, and I'm paying um, for that workout app, and I pay for games like a Sony PlayStation subscription, right? And I'm paying for something else, and then there are so many. I get confused. It's like really too many of them. Right, so you just draw, and again, the choice of what I draw here is not to only emphasize the emotion, but it's also to give the clue to the team how many subscriptions, what are the common subscriptions that users deal with. So it's a lot of useful information. It's not just for a nice picture here, right? We give a lot of clues for the conversation to start. For example, someone might say, and why don't you mention yada yada subscription? It's so popular in our region, right? And then you say, good point, right? We need to what do you say? Just to put it forward. All right, and then the next one is, do I have enough money, right? And then you could draw your character wondering, like, like scratching the back of their head, like, but what about my financial situation? So and usually what people use when they try to analyze where they are, where do they stand, they draw the bottom line, right? Is that they still own or they owe to the bank. And usually what they do is that they really relate to this up and down curve, right? When you get your salary and then it starts to go down. That's how people imagine their financial state. At least that's how I understand it. Yeah, I might be wrong here. And this guy or girl is trying to understand, right? So I have this curvature of money, and how much do I have in my account, and maybe I want to get some sort of orientation. Where do those subscription belong to, right? So do they create a situation when I cannot afford them anymore, right? So how do they stand against my financial situation? So I think it's going to convey my ideas about the thoughts and concerns of a customer. So now I want to move on to the solution frame, where I want to share with the team what I think could be a good idea. So I want to draw a hand drawing holding a smartphone, and just like a couple of really sticky fingers here and there, and that's a hand. And I'm just saying, like, okay, it's a mobile solution, and it's aggregating all the cards the customer has, and we need that because otherwise we don't really have an overview of the expenses associated with the subscriptions. And what else? And it's an application where it's easy to see all the financing situation, right? So the charts and stuff, which are easy to see. So easy charts or something like that. So it's a small screen, and I really want to have a full control over all of my cards that I'm owning, and see the expenses in an easy way, in an easy to understand way. So that's something I want to convey to the team to start a conversation. Is it a good idea? And then when it comes to features, I want to tell them that, okay, I think there are two major features. The feature A is that in that financial overview chart, I want to see the contribution of those subscriptions, and also understand how much do they constitute compared to the overall financing line, right? So that I could actually see whether my current subscriptions altogether are within range, right? So that I could really get an idea whether I am controlling those or not. So if I'm exceeding, so I will not buy a new subscription before I cancel something else, right? So that's one thing I think is important. And B, I think it would also be beneficial to have some kind of a categories breakdown, right? So I know that, okay, for example, the educational subscriptions are this much, and then the gaming subscriptions are this much, and maybe the rest is the TV subscriptions. And I really want to see some kind of a breakdown, also maybe in percentages and maybe in a real money value as well. So that's what I'm going to tell them about the major features. And I didn't really draw a person here because I wanted to use the full available space just to convey low fidelity mockups for how these features could look like. And then finally, I am telling them through the storyboard that, okay, in the end, we have this, really satisfied customer, like holding their smartphone in their hands, and like yay, full sense of control, right? So they imagine this curve and this line that they set, like I will never pay more than this much every month in subscription, and really make sure that those subscriptions never penetrate that line and everything is under control, right? So that could be an example of a storyboard to present an early idea where you compose a lot of assumptions. You compose an assumption about whether there is a desirability around it at all, and you can start a conversation whether the pain points are real, and you could run it by a potential end user, right? You can ask your partner or beloved ones, like, would you use an application like that? Do you think it's hitting on any of your pain points, and so forth? So you packaged a lot of assumptions, and then you could have a conversation in the context. So not just like talk about the feature. You could imagine the entire end-to-end process. Like, you want your subscription, okay, you get it under control, you get a new subscription, and it's there, right? So yeah, that's it, guys. I think
Yuri is back.
So I'm back, and before we go into the final assignment, I want to show you something. We have a prize for you guys. So if you finish this final assignment off and you send us the results, you have a chance to win by a very fair method a set of really cool Neuland pens for sketchnoting. It's a German brand I truly love. They're really great. They're refillable and all of that, in a very hipster, poshy type of a bag, which looks like a paper, but it's durable. It's really cool. And then you can organize all of your favorite pens in one place and carry them with you. So that's a prize. And the final assignment I would like to offer is for you to have some fun, right? Because we've talked about important things, and we tried to relate it back to our profession, trying to change the way the banking is done and the way digitized and all of that. But we also deserve some fun. So this assignment goes like this. Can you create a story that would include 4 elements? It would include the alien, because if you have an alien in the beginning of a story, you will have that alien in the end as well, right, Christina? So the alien.
Yes. Nice framing.
Yeah. The story will have payment. It doesn't matter what type of payment and in which context, but just payment. It will involve an ATM machine, the earthly creation, so ATM, and somehow the COVID will be there, the virus, so coronavirus. All right, so those are 4 elements that must be in your story, and fool around, come up with any type of a story, but somehow build these things in a storyboard, let's say 2x3, and tell any story you like. And what we would like to see is you combining the elements that we have introduced in this workshop. And it doesn't have to be serious, but it has to be diligently fulfilled. And what are the instructions, Christina? Will they need to send it to your email? And what happens then?
Yeah, if you would like to participate in this, one thing is that if you post it on social media, it's really nice. So we will come up a hashtag really quickly. But if you don't want to post it, it's fine too. Just send it to my email address. I'm writing this down. Or to Yuri's email address, both is fine, really. I don't know, Yuri, if you want to give that too. This is my email address, and everyone can participate. The only thing we will evaluate is that, of course, if you only drew a line or it's empty, you won't be able to participate, but otherwise it will be really randomly selected. We will put your name into a randomizer, and then a fortune will tell who wins this Neuland prize. And there is only one thing left, Yuri. We should come up with a hashtag and a deadline.
Yeah, what would be reasonable as a deadline? Is it like over the weekend enough? Yeah, Sunday, end of Sunday, so that we could so that we could resolve the choice of the winner on Monday. Okay, well, you got it, guys.
Yeah.
we didn't bring this up.
Yeah.
And the hashtag, well, I don't know. The alien stories probably were going to hit.
Yeah, but alien at ATM, I am sure it doesn't exist.
Yeah, okay, that sounds perfect. Alien at ATM. Love it. So that's the hashtag if you want to share through a hashtag. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to. No. And I will provide my email if you want to get in touch with me, but I think it's important that we centralize where we collect the images, right?
Yeah, right.
So please do send to Christina. My email goes like this if you need to reach out. So it's Yura Malishenko at gmail.com. But please do send images to Christina. And if you accidentally send to me, I will forward for sure.
So thank you very much for your attention and for participating in this workshop. I think we had a great time, or at least I hope you enjoyed it, and I also hope that we could show you the power of visual thinking and storytelling. And I just want to encourage you to discover this world a bit more, read books and articles, participate in Yuri's meetup, and really we just we would like to encourage you to reach out to us and ask questions, join our Facebook groups. Yeah, and the feedbacks are coming now.
Yeah.
Oh, my hand hurt. Yes, I can imagine.
Well, mine too.
Yeah.
That was intense. So don't think it's not normal. We just tried to package a lot of stuff, and
Yeah.
it hurts, but hopefully that was worth it.